So, hello everybody and welcome. You are watching the REWE Digital online stream, YouTube stream. And you will see our first online meetup in 2021. My name is Stefan and I'm a software engineer here at REWE Digital, and I'm your host for today, for this evening. So in August of last year, we had an event together with the Software-Entwicklung Cologne and our REWE Digital colleague Ansgar Himmel, where he talked about how to get better as a software developer. And today we want to continue with this topic, and we are very happy to have Bert Jan Schrijver here as our guest. And he will give a talk about the value of learning and sharing. And he has quite a lot to share, mainly his own personal history and how he developed in this area, and very many interesting topics. Bert Jan is a CTO at OpenValue, and he focuses on Java, continuous delivery, and DevOps topics. He's a Java champion, a Java 1 Rockstar speaker, Duke's Choice Award winner. He leads the Dutch Java user group, the NLJAC. And of course, he loves to share his experience as a conference speaker. He writes for the Dutch Java magazine. He's helping out DevOps for Kids with teaching kids how to code. So many opportunities and much experience that he can share with us today. So our today's agenda will be, after a short introduction of us, what we are doing right now. Bert Jan will give his presentation, his talk. You can watch this via YouTube stream. You can ask questions via the chat from time to time. Bert Jan will do a little break in his presentation where I will try to read out all your questions and Bert Jan will answer them. Of course, we can do this question and answers at the end of the talk. But after this presentation part, we will share a Google Meet link inside of the YouTube stream chat. And whoever wants to have a little bit more interactive discussion about the topic can join us in this Google Meet, where we will be present for the rest of the evening, and you can ask questions and discuss with us. Another colleague who is joining us is Sascha Wingrefe. Since 2.5 years, Sascha has been one of our HR managers for HR department, people development and learning. After 1.5 years focusing on our fulfillment warehouse locations, he switched to our technology colleagues at REWE Digital. And his main touch points with the topics of learning and sharing are research and education, and for about 4 years, the retail environment at REWE Digital. So he can give insights in the perspective of HR managers and people development in the area of software technology and development. I think this is enough of introduction from our side. I hope you're all well prepared, probably something to drink, a little bit to eat probably, and I hope you will enjoy this evening. I will now switch to the gallery mode. So hello Bert Jan, hello Sascha, welcome. First of all, a big thank you, and before I forget, also a big thank you to Ansgar, whom you will not see here, but he's the guy doing all the technical stuff in the background. So he has Open Broadcast Studio running, his capture card, and he's doing all the heavy lifting of presenting this stream in YouTube. So a big thank you to Ansgar. Okay, so without any further ado and a big round of virtual applause, I will hand over to Bert Jan. Thank you for being here, and I'm happy to watch and see your talk.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks for the nice introduction. With such a nice introduction, I can imagine that everybody's expecting a lot of awesome stuff. So the challenge is up to me to provide you with this. So this is my story of basically a career long of learning and sharing. So I assume that most of you who are watching have somewhat of a career in IT, or at least can imagine what a career in IT means. So think a bit back about the time when you started a career in IT, or think back on what made you, what was the moment that made you realize, hey, wow, I want to start a career in IT, and I might want to make this my job. Think back about this moment, and what was it that made you decide to pursue a career in IT? So for me, it started with this. So I'm sorry about the music. You probably either love it or you hate it. Can you let me know through the chat whether you think this music is awesome or you think it is garbage, and then we'll see like what the score is. So this was music, obviously, from the amazing Commodore 64, which was the first computer that I could lay my hands on when I was about, I think, 8 years old or something. So what could the Commodore 64 do? Well, take a look at this amazing commercial from 1983. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Because the Commodore is keeping up with you. In a world of fun and fantasy, and ever-changing views, and computer terminology, Commodore is news. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Because the Commodore is keeping up with you. Are you keeping up with the Commodore? Because the Commodore is keeping up with you. Yeah, so this was a commercial, I think, in Australia in 1983. And can you imagine that you are selling computers by showing pictures of people in a slide in a swimming pool? I guess that was what you did at the time when you were selling something. So yes, this was the Commodore 64, and this was the first computer that I ever touched. Obviously, it started with with playing games, old school games like Paperboy and Ski or Die and California games. But I was getting bored after a while of playing these games, and I found out that you could actually program the computer. And this was with Basic. We had a couple of books where I would kind of read like what was happening, but no idea what was going on. And I was just typing like these game listings over in my Commodore, and then I would run it, and then it wouldn't work. And because I had made some mistakes typing, and I had no idea why it didn't work, so then I would just throw it all away and try again. And then for some reason, I had the idea that it was better if I would type it from the beginning all the way to the end without saving in between. And then I had a brother who thought it was very nice to turn off the computer when I was almost done with typing for 3 days. So this was my first experience with programming. I'd say that they were fairly realistic because I also got a taste of like the frustrations that you can have as a programmer. Like you're writing something, it doesn't work, and you have no idea what you're doing and how to fix it. And I still have this feeling fairly regularly. So I learned to program in Basic there. And with Basic, well, it was a basic language. You could write text on the screen, read input, and also do some graphical stuff with sprites and stuff. And then our next computer was our first personal computer. And it kind of looked like this. So our first computer was a pretty much like this one, a 486 DX2 with a whopping 66 megahertz. And you could run Windows on this a little, but also stuff in DOS. And this was also an amazing amazing computer because you could run games on it like Doom and like 3D environments. And here I also continue to program a bit in Basic by using GW Basic. But I was the only kid in my class that somehow knew a bit to code a bit of basic, and I wanted to become better and to progress, but nobody could tell me. My parents didn't know, my classmates didn't know. So how was I going to progress in my challenge to become a better developer? So then my parents got me this. This was a modem, and a modem is something, well, that's comparable to your cable modem you have now. You would hook it up to a phone line, and then you could use your computer to call other computers. So at first I would use this to call friends, and then we could play Doom to each other. But you can also use it to call, I'd say, a predecessor of the internet, and these were bulletin board systems, and they kind of look like this. So you would have like a program running on your computer that would instruct your modem to dial a number, and somebody would have had software running there, and this software would interface with your computer, and you would have like text-based interaction, so menus where you could read and write messages, upload and download files. And I think you could see this kind of like as a predecessor of the internet. So obviously there were some drawbacks of this because, well, it uses the phone line. So when you're doing this, your phone line is occupied. So many times I would call a bulletin board system, and then my mother would pick up the phone because she wanted to call somebody, and she would hear this noise through the phone, and my connection would drop. And obviously calling bulletin boards over the phone costs some money. So after the first month we had this modem, we had a huge phone bill, and I couldn't use the computer anymore for a couple of months. But still, this was like my first experience of engaging in a community of like-minded people, because through these BBSs you could meet other people that had also had a computer and a modem that were also into maybe programming or making music or making graphics. So through these bulletin board systems, I found out that there was a language called Pascal, a programming language, and I learned how to program in Turbo Pascal. And with Turbo Pascal, you could create actually exe files, so executables that will run on DOS and Windows. And then I could make my own programs and utilities, and made something that I installed on a computer at school, and then the computer blew up, which I didn't mean to, but it did. So I managed to get away there by saying I had no idea what happened. But this behind this, let's say, environment and community of bulletin boards, there was a whole community of people that were sharing experience with each other, like how do you program a cool 3D effect in Pascal or in assembly, or how do you make cool graphics or cool music. And through these interactions, I found out about the demo scene. And the demo scene is basically a well, you could call the computer art subculture. So this is the definition from Wikipedia. It's a lot of text that I'm not going to bore you by reading it, but you are reading it now anyway. But if we zoom in a bit, you can say that the demo scene is a computer art subculture that produces demos. And a demo can be like a short executable. It's mainly to show off how amazing your programming skills are. So these would be developed as intros, so something that you would see in front of a game. Typically when a game was cracked, so the copy protection was cracked, to demonstrate their amazing coding skills, these people would develop a demo like this with cool graphical effects that they would show like before the program you would run. And the nice thing was that these people who were involved in this, they also had the desire to every now and then meet each other in person instead of just online. And these people gathered at something called a demo party. And a demo party is, well, actually, I think you could say that this is what people did before social media, because I have a picture of a demo party that I attended. This was in '97 in Etteleur in the Netherlands. And a couple of hundred people are here, and they bring their own computers into a big giant gym hall, and it's really hot, and they're sitting there for an entire weekend just coding or making music or making graphics, and also sharing like, hey, you can do this a bit more effective here, you can do this and that. And this was, I think, my first experience of engaging in a community and sharing with other people what I knew, and the other people teaching me what they knew. And obviously this was just a group of kids, like, I don't know, 16 to 18 years old maybe. And this was never about gaining money or gaining cheap success. It was about receiving respect from your peers and participating in competition, for example. So one competition that I really liked was that you needed to write an intro, which is like, I'll show a bit more about this later. But the intro is a series of graphical effects in the least amount of code possible. For example, there was a size limit, so you should make a demo that shows some amazing stuff in maximum of 4 kilobytes, for example. And then you couldn't win any money, but you could win respect, and maybe you would won like a can of Bulgarian yogurt if you won the first prize. But that's about what you could get there. So this was fairly small, I'd say a couple of hundred people, but they were bigger. So this is a picture from the assembly demo party in Finland. 5,000 people gathered here in an ice hockey rink. And well, I guess what I said before, I guess this is what people did before social media, right? They would just bring their computers all the way together and then teach each other amazing stuff and share and have some fun along the way. So to give you an idea on like how these products look, is I have an example of a 4 kilobyte intro from 1999. I shortened it a bit, and this is something that a couple of people that I work with developed in that time. So the effects don't work too well on the screen, but just to give you an idea on what we did in 4 kilobyte in 1999. Remember that this was made by 16-year-old kids. I found that fairly amazing at that time. Obviously, now you have like 3D cards and whatever, but then people needed to make this all by themselves. And this was kind of like pre-internet, right? Because people would mainly call Bulletin boards and exchange knowledge there. So I thought it was pretty amazing how this all worked. So do we any questions so far? No, Stefan, you're saying you remember all of this and you're getting old. Yeah, I have the same feeling every now and then. Is there anyone who also remembers like the demo scene from the old days? Can you let us know to the chat? I'm curious to see like if Stefan and I are the only dinosaurs, or we have more old school people here. So if you compare this to current times, like this intro was 4 kilobytes. If you take like a picture that your phone takes is maybe a megabyte or something, so that's 244 times the size of this 4 kilobyte intro. If you take a piece of music or an MP3 from Spotify, this is 3.5 megabytes, so that's 854 times the size of this 4 kilobyte intro. And if you start a new project at a client, and you download the new Spring Boot application from start.spring.io, it's about 34 megabytes. So that's 8,300 times the size of this 4 kilobyte intro. Yeah, so we have some in the audience who have been at the demo parties before. Nice. So then it was time to start doing serious stuff. So I went to study, and I went to study at the Twente University, where for some reason they have this a church who is halfway underwater. And I learned a lot of things there, some less useful than others. For example, how you can open a beer bottle with a newspaper. So Stefan, do you know how you can open a beer bottle with a newspaper?
Yeah. I'm not drinking that much beer, but I have seen it. So you have to somehow fold this and
yeah. So what you do is you take a newspaper, you roll it up really tight, then you fold it, and the place where it's folded is really strong. So then you use this folded part to open the beer bottle. It's a nice party trick. So I studied there for a couple of years longer than I should have, but it was fun anyway. And then I landed my first job, which was at a company in Utrecht, where I started working as a Java developer. And I worked quite some years at this company. It was fun. I learned a lot of different things there about how the company worked and how software development worked. and how to take it a bit step further from just coding stuff yourself, but really going into software engineering and how functional designs and technical designs worked and a bit of infrastructure. But I learned mostly about how this company worked, and I didn't learn much about how the outside world or what other companies were doing. I do remember that I had my first speaking appearance there. So when I was working there for a year, we had like a Christmas party, and then one of the directors asked me if I, as one of the new hires, would do a presentation there. And I was really scared to go on stage for all my colleagues and all the partners, but I managed to do it, and I actually found out that I kind of liked like sharing some of the things that I had learned there. So this was, I think, my first experience with speaking in front of groups. So I worked there for, I think, a couple of years, and it was fine. But I kind of got the idea that I was missing out on things that were happening outside of the company, until this message appeared from a colleague. So it's it's in Dutch, but I'll translate it. So it's from a colleague, and he's asking me if I want to go to an event organized by a partner from the Netherlands Java User Group, and it was a course in Groovy, and we're talking about 2012. So Groovy was then becoming, I think, a bit more popular and a bit more hip. So I had no idea what Groovy was, but it sounded groovy. And the fun thing is this colleague invited me because his usual colleague that would go to him on these knowledge sessions couldn't make it. So I was kind of like a second choice because he didn't want to go alone, and probably he needed me to drive him there because he didn't have a car. But anyway, I went to this course. It ended with kind of like a programming challenge. And I remember that I was sitting next to his colleague, and at the time I was working with Eclipse and he was working with IntelliJ. And the people organizing the course had set up a complete workspace in Eclipse. So I said, okay, I'll just go for Eclipse, and I was up to speed really quickly. And the challenge was coming along fairly nice. I think I needed to build a REST endpoint or something. And I was making good progress while he was still struggling with setting up his IntelliJ and getting everything to work. But he was a way better developer than me, but he was setting up his IntelliJ, and I was just hacking around in my Eclipse. And in the end, I was the first who had completed the challenge. So I won. And I got into the kind of in the attention of the company that was organizing this course. So a couple of days after the course, I got an email, and the email says, "Hey, I heard your name from this and that, and I think you could be of good value in the role of our Java competence leader or software architect within our organization." So up until today, the colleague that invited me to this workshop feels a bit guilty for playing a part in me leaving the company. But well, I would have left anyway, I think so. But when I joined this other company, they were a lot more active in Java communities and organizing events and stuff like this. So I joined this company, and I went straight to the first JFOL. So JFOL is a big conference in the Netherlands. This was in 2012, I think. And this is kind of like how it looked, like a big keynote room with people sharing all these amazing things that were happening. And I was amazed to see all the interesting things that were being shared there, and a whole new world opened for me. And straight away, I got a feeling that I had been missing out on this for years. So this was really like an eye-opener for me. Like, wow, there are all these amazing companies that are sharing the cool projects they're doing, and conferences where you can learn stuff. And wow, I had no idea that all this was going on. So then I learned about meetups. And the first meetup I joined was in 2013, and it was a meetup about Docker. So this is the early days of Docker, right? This is almost seven years ago. And this company that organized this meetup was one of the first in the Netherlands to do stuff with Docker. So I went there, and they explained me like I needed to set up a development box with Vagrant, and then I could run Docker stuff on there. And well, it sounded interesting, but so far I'd mainly been working with VMs, and VMs were doing pretty much okay as well. And infrastructure as code wasn't really big at the time, so I didn't really see that much in Docker. But the company where I worked also had like an infrastructure department and some people who were doing fairly cool stuff with VMs and things like this. So I told one of the more let's say modern colleagues there, and thought, yeah, I heard about this thing. It's called Docker, and it's sort of virtualization, but a bit more lightweight, and you can start them up really fast. And this might become something interesting in the future. And he said, oh, okay, I'll take a look at it. And then 2 weeks later, I talked to him, and I said, like, so this Docker thing, did you look into it yet? And he said, yeah, no, I didn't look into it yet, but I'm going to do soon. and then didn't talk to him for a while. And then after a couple of weeks, I talked to him again, and he said, "Yeah, I have something to tell you." So what's going on? Yeah, I'm going to leave the company. So, oh, that's a shame. What are you going to do? Yeah, I'm going to work at Red Hat. I said, okay, that's interesting. Well, what are you going to do at Red Hat? Yeah, I'm going to be one of their first Docker evangelists. So that was interesting for me to hear that I had, let's say, introduced a Docker evangelist to Docker. I think he still works there right now. So, and we've all known, where Docker has gone since then. So, a colleague pushed me to start writing for the Dutch Java magazine, which is about the same as the German Java magazine, I would say. And I joined the editorial board there, and so this is the committee that takes care of reviewing articles and gathering articles for this magazine. And this was my first step to become an active contributor to the Dutch Java community. So the company where I worked got acquired, and kind of switch focus. So I wanted to switch jobs, and I kind of thought to myself, like, what do I really want? I want to work with amazing people. I want to work in a company that's not too big, so there's good personal attention, and I want to work in a company where we can do awesome things. So I found two of those companies. Both I met through the Dutch Java community by events that we're organizing. So I switched to another company and started my new role there. So by the way, for Java Magazine, if you like to write, then for the Dutch Java Magazine, articles are always welcome. You can write both in Dutch, but for some of you that might be a challenge, as well in English. We can help you write. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to the NLJUG, and we're happy to publish one or more articles about interesting Java-related topics. So then, stimulated by some of my colleagues, I gave my first conference talk, and this was at JFall 2014. And you can see that this is, I'm not so experienced here, because here is a picture of me from the video where I am explaining things to the screen behind me instead of to the audience. And then we continue a bit, and here I'm explaining things to the floor. I'm having fun though, so that's good, right? I'm laughing. And then a third picture, I'm explaining things to the wall with my back facing the audience. So I'm presenting from the corner of the room with my back facing the audience. But lo and behold, a couple of years later, I'm explaining things to people now. So I'm actually looking at people and talking to them, and not standing in the corner with my back or looking at the ground. So obviously this took a while. It's not like I went from the first presentation to opening the JFO conference for like 1,000 people or something. So I first started presenting at small meetups, then started presenting at some national conferences, and then I started to speak internationally as well, so some bigger events. So I also helped a couple of local communities start up, so a couple of local user groups, and I'd say that it was fairly rewarding because they were really happy with me helping them start up, find locations, find speakers. And I also then joined the board of the Netherlands Java User Group, and I organized the JFall and the JSpring conference a couple of times. And I learned a lot there, also in terms of organizing events and running Chrome committees, etc. So I'd say this overall has been a really enjoyable experience of sharing my knowledge and learning from other people. Because the nice thing is that once you start sharing your knowledge and engaging with other people, you get a lot in return, because people will ask you questions, or they share their own experiences, or you get into interesting conversations. So I think there's a real nice combination between those two. You bring stuff, but you also gain stuff from your audience. So this was my story of learning and sharing so far. And next we're going to talk about you. But first, let's see if we have any questions. I think so far we mainly have remarks, right? Okay, we'll see whether the questions come. I say, Tim remembers programming on the Apple II. Well, that's a bit before my time. All right, so let's talk a bit about you now, and with you I mean you the audience. So, if you work as a developer, why is it important to keep learning? Why shouldn't you just, I don't know, learn Java and then relax for the rest of your career? Well, let's take a look at our tech landscape. So in the front end space, we started with HTML and then came jQuery and then Bootstrap and then Angular and then this is Polymer, I think, and then React and then Vue and then Redux and then TypeScript. And this is only the front end world. In the back end world, we had Java and then Java EE and then Spring and Scala and Groovy and Vertex and Kotlin and Micronaut and Quarkus. And then there's also the infrastructure level, and you have Linux and AWS and Google and Azure and Docker and Kubernetes and Terraform and Cloud Foundry. And this is just a small thing, small piece of the world that you operate in if you're like a developer in the Java or in the front end spaces. So, and I didn't even talk about databases or big data or machine learning. So as a developer, you continuously need to keep your knowledge up to date. Otherwise, you get behind. So how do you keep up? How do you stay relevant as a developer? What is your fuel as a developer to stay relevant in your career? Well, the number one fuel for developers obviously is pizza, right? So my advice is to visit meetups, visit company events, visit community events. The worst thing that can happen if you visit a meetup is a boring evening, but you still have free food and free drinks, right? So you learn new things, you meet new people, you get to have interesting conversations and discussions. And do you know what's nice with a career in IT? Is that the better you get, the better it gets. So once you reach a certain level of seniority, well, let's say in terms of experience, not necessarily in age, things get a bit more comfortable, because most of the situations you encounter, you've already seen in some form before. And something that you've learned with Java EE in the past is you can also apply with Spring Boot or Quarkus. And something you learned in MySQL, you can also maybe apply in Cassandra or something. So in the end, you get these transferable skills that makes you feel a bit more comfortable in new situations. So I remember doing a project once for, I think, a government or something, and we needed to build an interface with a company that made software for, I think, schools or something. And I was talking with one of their information analysts, and we were discussing the interface we're going to design. And then I was explaining like the goals of the interface. I needed to fetch some information from them. And then he didn't understand me, or he didn't understand what I was explaining. And then I thought, okay, is this him or is this me? He knew who it was. So he said to me, and he was a bit bald and he had a small earring. Well, that was just to sketch the situation. He had lost his wild hairs, so to say, and made up for it with an earring. And he said, Bert Jan, the last time I doubted myself when I didn't understand something is a long time ago. And then I was like, so who is this guy, and why is he saying this? And is he so arrogant that if he doesn't understand something, it's always the fault of the other? But once you have some reasonable experience in the field and you don't understand something, it might not be your fault, right? So if you don't understand something, don't doubt yourself, but ask for an explanation. Say, okay, I didn't quite catch that. Can you explain this? What do you mean with this? Can we go a bit deeper? Because it can be the fault of the other as well, right? The person who's explaining maybe didn't explain it clearly, or didn't understand your question, or whatever. So think to yourself: have you ever shared your knowledge with colleagues, or on an event, or in a blog, or on Twitter, or on brown bag sessions? And do you think it's fun to share knowledge? So I often ask this to groups of people, and then some of them raise their hands, but most of them don't do. They don't think it's fun. And this is why. Because you are somewhere here, right? You're in your comfort zone. And the magic happens right outside your comfort zone. And getting on stage the first time feels a bit uncomfortable, right? So it's not that you go on stage and you feel comfortable right away. But it's something that comes with time. Once you've done it more often and for bigger groups, you get comfortable, and you actually get to enjoy it and to gain energy from your audience instead of just being scared on stage. So is it mandatory? Must you share your knowledge as a developer? Well, of course not. But I hope that you will. And I'll tell you why I like sharing knowledge. So I think it's fun. It's fun because you meet lots of new people, In my case, I've seen a lots of different countries, traveling to different conferences around the world, and you're volunteering to educate others by sharing your experience. And if you're doing something as a volunteer, it better be fun. So, newsflash, of all people that are speaking at conferences in the Java world, almost nobody is getting paid. If you're lucky, a conference pays for your hotel and your plane ticket, but that's about it. Mostly just sponsoring it yourself. So if you do something as a volunteer, it better be fun. But luckily, it is, because you get to know amazing people. There are speaker dinners at conferences where you can meet the best people in your profession in the world. So this is a picture from I think a conference in Barcelona a couple of years ago. So with all the speakers, we went on a boat, went out sailing, barbecuing, and had a generally amazing time there. And by going to these conferences and these speaker dinners and meeting people, you also meet people that you've maybe known for a while from other conference or from Twitter or whatever. And in my case, I've met most of my heroes from the Java world in these type of conference. So there's Mark from the Java team at Oracle. There's Trisha from JetBrains, Joyce from Spring, Yara from the DevCon, Stefan from DevOps, and so on and so forth. And the nice thing is that these are all just regular people who like to eat and drink and talk about tech. And the nice thing is that if you're at a speaker dinner for a Java conference, then you know there's one topic that you can always talk about, and this is Java and tech, right? So it's different from a birthday party. If I'm at a birthday party, I have no idea what I should talk about with people because, well, probably they don't have the same interest as me. But when I'm at a conference, I can talk tech, so it's a lot more relaxed for me than talking at a birthday party. So somebody in this list used to run the @Java account on Twitter. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to guess who this is, and then I'll share you. So this is Yolande Poirier, a lady originally from France, and she has run the @Java account on Twitter for a long while. She hasn't done so for a couple of years, but she used to do it for a long time. So once you get comfortable with sharing your knowledge and going to conferences and presenting on stage, you get to create some of the fun yourself. And I like to play some tricks on the audience every now and then to have some fun with the audience. So this is a picture I took at the Java Zone conference in Oslo. And at Java Zone, there is an amazing overflow room. So the overflow room is a room where you can go when the other rooms are full, and they are live showing all the talks from all the rooms, in this case about 7 rooms, live showing it here. And when you go in, you get a headset that you can put on, and you can switch the channel, so you can basically zap through all the conference talks that are now going on live at this conference. So imagine that you're speaking somewhere, and there's people in this overflow room watching your talk. Then you can do something to try to get these people to tune into your talk as well, right? So here's what I did with a couple of colleagues at the Java Zone 2019. So this is what they were seeing. I'm presenting with Tim there. And I'm asking my colleagues to come up to the stage and to shout and yell at the people in the overflow room. And then I did this. So I got quite a couple of reactions from the overflow room. Then some people liked it, some didn't. But well, you get to create some of the fun when you go on stage as well. So sharing knowledge is also important, obviously because of the high speed of in which our industry is developing. But it's also the only thing that multiplies when you share it. If I share a piece of pie with you, then I have less pie myself. But if I share a piece of knowledge with you, then now we both have this knowledge, right? And it challenges you. So sharing something challenges you because you need to learn the subject and you need to master the subject. So you learn how to communicate, you learn how to get an idea across, and you help others. But in return, you get new insights from others. And also, I think a big plus of getting out there and sharing your knowledge is that you stand out in the crowd. Not many people have the guts to go on stage and to present at conferences. So in my case, if I'm hiring candidates and I have 3 candidates that look equal in terms of experience or knowledge, and one of them has speaking experience, then probably I'm going to go for the candidate that has speaking experience, because I know that this person took the effort to put themselves on a stage and share their knowledge with others. So sharing increases your own knowledge, and sharing also enriches your own experience because you got things in return. So no questions so far, I think. So let's continue. So I'll give you a short peek behind the screens from the JFL conference that I organize in the Netherlands. So at JFL, we offer a couple of different types of sessions, and it's good to know that these exist, so you can have an idea of different types to get your story across, because you can also apply this when you're presenting in your company or at a local meetup or somewhere else. One thing that you probably all know is a keynote. So a keynote is a session for the entire audience of a conference. I think this is the hardest session that you can do, because the audience didn't come there for you. They came there because there weren't any other sessions, so they just sit in the room, and then you get on stage and you start telling a story that they didn't ask for. So presenting a keynote for the entire audience of the conference is the hardest thing you can do, because it's a diverse audience. There will be developers in there, maybe testers, maybe managers, and they didn't ask for you. So I wouldn't advise you to start with presenting keynotes at conferences, but to start a bit smaller. And a typical session is a technical session where you're presenting something about a technical topic, a project you did, or a technology or framework. And these are typically around 50 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes, where you can go a bit in depth with some technical topic. So if 50 minutes is not enough for you, then you can also go in more like deep dive session. These are typically expert sessions that last about 3 or 4 hours, where you really get in depth with a specific topic. These are sometimes also called university sessions. Also interesting, but a lot of work to prepare, because you need to have real good content, and typically more advanced people come to these types of sessions. One fun way of sharing your knowledge that is a bit less stressing than presenting in front of a group is a hands-on lab or a workshop. So you prepare a workshop on a topic, you make sure that the audience brings their laptop, that they can find instructions somewhere, and then you just help them whenever they get stuck. And this is fairly similar to helping a colleague in the workplace, right? So if you want to get started with sharing knowledge, but you're a bit hesitant to go on stage and speak in front of a group, then starting with hands-on labs or workshops can be a good idea, because then you can do most of the preparation up front, and you can help people whenever they get stuck. One of the easiest ways, I think, to participate in a conference is in a panel discussion. A panel discussion is typically a discussion around some topic where a discussion leader interviews the people in the panel. Obviously, you need to have some kind of credibility to be in this panel and say something about the topic. But it is, for me, a nice way to participate without needing to prepare anything. I just go, I sit, and I answer a question when somebody asks me something. If you ever participate in a panel, please think about diversity. So make sure that there are not only, I don't know, young white males in a panel, but there's at least a good cross cut of the different types of people that visit the event, and hopefully also some people from maybe underrepresented groups in the audience. Because there's been lots and lots of occasions where conference had male-only panels, also called menels. And this is typically not a good way to, improve the diversity in our field. Another fun way to kind of get started with speaking is a shorter type of session. So at JFL, we have bite-sized sessions, which last 16 minutes, so two bites. And a bite-sized session is a short talk where you can do a short presentation about one topic. And typically about three of these sessions fit in a regular slot. So there are quite some slots available. And this can be a nice way to get started, to kickstart your career as a speaker. Because you only need to present for 60 minutes and not for an hour or so. I think the most fun sessions to present, but probably also the hardest ones, are Ignite sessions. So an Ignite session is a session of 5 minutes. There are 20 slides, and the slides auto forward every 15 seconds. So you start your presentation, then you cannot touch your computer anymore. The slides go auto forward every 15 seconds. So the presenters either make it and they nail every transition, or they completely screw up and get lost halfway through the story. But for the audience, it's awesome either way, right? Ignite sessions are fun, and they're typically not really about technical topics, but can be about all kinds of topics. They are a nice way to get started, but they can be even more stressful than presenting for an hour, because you present for an hour and you get lost for a minute, you still have 59 minutes left. If you present an Ignite session, you get lost for a minute, you're basically screwed, because you're never going to catch up again. The good thing about an Ignite session is you can practice it 12 times in 1 hour. So you can get a lot of practice in there if you like. So let's zoom out a bit and think like what defines a good presentation. So I frequently run speaker mentoring programs where I help aspiring speakers to land their first presentation as a speaker, and also to give them some tips on improving and getting started. And this is some of the content of these speaker mentoring workshops. So never forget that a good presentation ideally entertains the audience. If I go to a presentation and I'm completely bored, then I'm going to remember that it was a boring presentation. I'm not going to remember whether I learned anything. If I go to a presentation, it's awesome in terms of entertainment, but I didn't learn anything, I'm still going to have a good feeling because I'm going to remember that I was entertained there. So think about how you can make it a bit fun for the audience. Try to get some of their interaction, try to ask questions, try to make jokes, but be aware that making jokes is also a risk. And humor works different in different cities. I've had completely different responses on jokes in the Netherlands, in Estonia, and in the US. If you present in more Eastern European companies, you're not going to get any reactions from the audience. They're not going to respond to you, not going to say anything, not going to laugh. And in the feedback afterwards, you're going to hear that they found it amazing, but they're just not so responding. If you say something wrong in a presentation in the US, then chances are that people will start shouting at you that you did something wrong. So be aware that people take different jokes in different ways. Never make jokes about politics, race, diversity, I don't know, about the people's church or about the American president. About just over 4 years ago, I was at Java 1 in San Francisco and I made a joke about Trump, and the audience didn't like it. And well, they were right, because this was their reality for the next 4 years. So try to stay away from these kind of tricky topics. So talking about entertaining, the nice thing with entertaining is that the audience doesn't need to learn from it, as long as they are somewhat entertained. So to give you an example, I regularly present about topics like continuous delivery. And a big part of continuous delivery is automation, when you're automating things. So during this talk, I'm telling 2 stories about automation. So the first one is about a project I did for an insurance company. And this was about, I think, getting travel insurance or bicycle insurance or something. So when you go through this process, the first thing you do is you need to enter your postal code. So the insurance software can determine where you live, because the premium you pay for an insurance is different when you live in a city where there's lots of crime compared to a city with not so much crime. So if you, for example, if you now want to insure a bicycle, probably it's more expensive in the Netherlands than it is in Germany, because in the Netherlands we have all kinds of riots of people who don't like being locked up in their homes at night. So this starts with typing in your postal code, and then you can continue, and then they use your location data to determine your premium. So we're just gone live with a new project, and after everything was running smoothly, and after a while, a couple of months or a year or something, in the morning the client calls and they are panicking a little, because they're saying, yeah, we have a problem because nobody can enter new policies in production anymore, because they cannot continue after screen 1. And we're like, okay, that's strange. So what's on screen 1? Yeah, on screen 1 they enter their postal code. We're like, okay, so what's wrong with the postal code? So then, yeah, once you enter your postal code, the system doesn't find anything, and they cannot enter their postal code, and people cannot continue after the screen. So we're like, okay, that's strange. So let's see what's going on there. And we look in the postal code table in the database, and it's completely empty. There should be hundreds of thousands of postal codes in there, but it's completely empty. So we're like, okay, what's the case? What could have happened? Okay, let's first fix it. So we run the postal code import again, and this imports the most recent postal code file, and everything is okay again. People can enter policies again, and the client is happy. But we're like, we need to investigate what happened, because this is strange, right? What was the problem there? Okay, let's see. Did we run any scheduled jobs? No, nothing. Did anybody touch the database? No, nobody logged into the database. Okay, what's wrong? So we are contacting the company that was doing the hosting, and we're like, "Did you do anything?" "No, we didn't do anything." "And can you send us the logs?" Nothing happened in the logs, and we really didn't know what happened. So then we said, "Okay, let's ask for the transaction logs of the database." So we got the transaction logs of the database, and there it was. There was a truncate table postal code was in the transaction logs of the database. So okay, there's our cause. But what or who did this truncate statement? So okay, strange. Did you run anything on the database? No, no. Any scheduled things? No, no, nothing. Okay, strange. And then we're thinking, and then somebody in the room, smarter than me, said, "Okay, so how long is it ago that we went to production?" We said, "Yeah, well, it's about a year ago." So is it about a year ago, or is it exactly a year ago? And it's I think it's about exactly a year ago. Okay, so what do we typically do when we go live? No, we're like, well, if we go live, then we truncate the postal code table because we want to remove all the test postal codes. Okay, so did we maybe do this a year ago? And we're like, okay, maybe. So we go back searching in mails, and we have a mail from some of the people working at the hosting company, and they say, and it's about cleaning the postal code table. And the last mail we have is, "Yes, guys, I've scheduled it." I was like, okay, that's interesting. So why did he schedule it? Well, he scheduled it because he was in the train, and he wanted to make sure that the command run if his internet connection would drop. So we're asking the company again, like the hosting company, "Is anything scheduled there maybe that does something with the database?" "No, there's nothing scheduled. Only this thing that's been there forever." And we're like, "So what's this thing that's been there forever?" "Yeah, this is special.sh." Okay, that sounds special. So what is in special.sh? "Yeah, I don't know. It's been there forever." "So can you look in special.sh what happens in that script?" "Oh, it connects to the database and it truncates the postal code table." So we're like, okay, well, that's our call. So why is it in there? So what had happened is this person who was in a train who didn't want the command to fail, he had scheduled the command, but he had scheduled it in a cron job. So with cron, you need to say like it runs on this hour, on this minute, on this day of this month, and he couldn't set the year. So exactly a year later, the command ran again, the postal code table truncated, and well, the rest is history. So think about when you automate things, think about also what can go wrong, and in what cases can this automation do something that might not be desirable. So another story about automation is something that has nothing to do with IT, but it's a personal story from my experience. So I have two kids; they're now 7 and 9. But this is a story from a couple of years ago, and I think my daughter was 3 and my son was 1. So we were at my parents-in-law's house, and my daughter came to me and she was just learning how to use the toilet. So she said, "Daddy, I need to go to the toilet." And I said, "Okay, that's fine. Go to the toilet." So she runs to the toilet. And then my son comes to me, and he was 1 at the time, and he said, "Daddy, I need to go to the toilet too." So I said, "Okay, you go ahead, go to the toilet." And then I realized that there is a possible problem with this situation, because the toilet at my parents-in-law's house, it's not a regular toilet. It's one of those automated toilets that can do all kinds of automated cleaning operations whenever you activate it. So I think I better go check this out. So I went to the toilet and I see my daughter sitting there, and she was doing potty training at the time. So it was important that it was like a enjoyable experience for her. And my son is standing next to the toilet and he is inspecting the toilet. And on the toilet are some buttons with lights that are blinking. And if you're a 1-year-old boy and you see lights that blink on buttons, then you probably want to touch the buttons, right? So I think I better not let him activate this toilet, because my daughter is sitting on there and she will be traumatized for her life as this thing activates. So I tell to my son, Pim, his name is Pim, I said, "Pim, do not press that button." Well, if you're a 1-year-old and you see a button with lights and your dad tells you not to press it, then you want to press it, obviously, right? So he moves a bit closer to the toilet. And I said, "Pim, do not press that button." And he moves closer to the toilet. And my final chance was to become a bit more strict on him. So I said, "Pim, if you touch that button, you are in trouble." So he looks at me straight in the eye. And without breaking eye contact, his finger goes to the button and he presses the button and the toilet activates. And at that time, I only have a split second to decide. So I see my daughter sitting there. There's this thing coming out of the toilet that's going to spray. So the only thing you can do is pick her up and move her away. And at that time, the toilet activates. So it starts spraying wildly, and I get wet. My son is wet. My daughter is wet. Everybody is crying. There was one good thing, is that the toilet was not, the water was nice and warm. But apart from that, it was one big drama. So from this situation, I got everybody out, and we need to dry up. And I was giving it some thought, like, okay, what went wrong here? Apart from my failing parenting skills, we could say that there maybe was also a technology failure, because this was an automated toilet, right? And in this case, the automation was not used in the way that this was intended. So what I learned from this is that if you automate something, automation is only as good as its ability to cope with the unexpected. So in this case, it was an unexpected scenario that the toilet would activate when there was no behind above it, so to say. So if I were to design something like this, I would probably include a sensor that would make sure that it would only activate if there's somebody sitting on top of it. But luckily, I'm not a toilet designer. But this is also an explanation of automation going wrong. But it also was an explanation of telling something that's completely unrelated, that you don't learn anything from, but hopefully is fun. But obviously, a good presentation hopefully also educates the audience, so the audience learns something. So how much can you learn an audience in let's say 50 minutes? Well, not that much, right? So I always try to introduce a topic and to inspire the audience to continue with this. So give them some hints, share some of your experience, but you cannot explain something completely in an hour. I think a good presentation should also make contact with the audience. In a stream like this, it's fairly hard, right? I can ask you a question, like, can you respond in the chat? But then it takes 10 seconds for you to hear me say this, and then you need to type something back, and need to read it and relay it. And in the meantime, I'm waiting. So this doesn't work as well. But if you're standing in front of a group, there's lots of things you can do. You can ask questions. You can ask for a show of hands. You can look at people. You can make them stand up, sit down. And this also helps to make it easier for the audience to stay in touch with you and to stay active in the session. And this is not mandatory, but it helps. A good presentation also shares a passion. So it shares something that you're passionate about, because then it's easy to be enthusiastic and to get other people, make them enthusiastic as well about your topic. So I'd say a good presentation tells your story. So something that you experienced, the results, I did this and then this happened. What have you done in the situation, and what have you learned? And the nice thing about sharing your experiences is that you are the only one who has this experience, right? So if I've worked with something for a year and I cram this experience into a talk of 50 minutes, then the audience gains a year of experience in 50 minutes. So I think that's an awesome thing to do. So are you ready to take the stage? Who is going to present at the next REWE meetup? We'll see. I see you thinking, well, I'm not sure. So I know 4 things you're thinking about why you should not start presenting. First one is you have no idea where to start. Well, you all did interesting stuff, believe me. So look a bit back about what did you do in the past year. Talk a bit about with others, because if you're an expert in something, everything seems boring and simple. But this might be really interesting for others. You did interesting stuff, I'm sure. I don't know where to start. Well, I'll tell you in a minute where you can start. I've never presented before. So a wise person once said, I've never done it, so I think I can do it. So this is a quote from Pippi, well, I'm not sure what the English translation is. Pippi Longstocking. It's like this children figure who is in a children's show. So if you keep saying this, then it won't happen. But you need to start somewhere, right? So you're afraid you might make a fool of yourself. Well, this is mainly about practicing, I'd say. So I practice as well for talks, mainly for timing. So how long does it take? I have 45 minutes. Do I not talk for 1.5 hours? And also a bit of choice of words, because English is not my mother language. So practicing a bit helps me find words a bit easier. you can always make a fool of yourself, but even experienced speakers can make a fool of themselves. So I've recently talked to a friend who she had an experience about talking at a conference, and he was scheduled to speak just after lunch. And then he went out with a friend to a seafood bar really close to the conference venue. So they had seafood, and then he was ready to go on stage, and he was feeling a bit not so nice, and he had his microphone already on. So his microphone already on. 2 minutes before his talk, he was feeling sick, and he said, "Okay, I better run to the toilet before something happens." And the toilet was right next to the room. So he runs to the toilet. He's sick, throws everything out, and feels immediately relieved. Goes back to the stage and is ready to take the stage and to entertain the audience. But when he comes back to the room, the entire audience is looking at him like, and they're shocked. And he's like, "So what happened?" And then the sound technician comes to him and say, "Yeah, the microphone was already on." So the entire audience had enjoyed his little accident there. So one big thing to learn is always check if your microphone is on when you're going to do something. But apart from this, the chance that you make a fool of yourself are not that big. If you practice, then you'll probably be good. So do you have any other excuses? Yeah, probably. Let me know through the chat. I see one question by Birgit. How do you practice? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there are different ways of how you can practice a presentation. You can practice all by yourself in front of your computer, for example. You can practice in front of friends. You can practice in front of colleagues and ask feedback. I think that there are two main goals of practicing a presentation. The first one is to get a bit comfortable with the topic just by yourself. And to do this, you don't need anybody else. And the second one is to get feedback and to improve. So if you present for a group of other people, even if it's, I don't know, your dog or your cat or your family, then you can still get feedback on, okay, you said quite a lot of times you said, or I didn't quite understand this. So for me, practicing is mainly doing. And what I used to do a while ago, if I was practicing new talk, is that I would combine it with doing sports. So I had like a cross trainer, this thing you stand on and you step and you move your hands. So I would go on the cross trainer, put it in front of my laptop, and then practice my talk while I was on the cross trainer. Because I figured that if I could present this talk when I'm out of breath, then probably I can also do it when I'm a bit nervous in a conference room. So practicing, I think, is mainly going through your presentation and telling it either to yourself or to friends or to colleagues. So where do you start when you want to get started speaking? Well, it starts all with a topic, right? So choose something you're comfortable with. Ideally something you've worked with in the past year or something. Write an abstract for your talk. So write a couple of lines of text on what you want to talk about, write a good title, and have this reviewed by a couple of friends or colleagues. Submit it to a meetup, to a company event, to a conference, and keep your fingers crossed. And one thing that's good to know is that don't be afraid to cross the border. Well, in these days of pandemics, probably you do, but once this is all over, don't be afraid to submit to conference in another country. Because if you, when you're living in Germany, you submit a proposal to a conference in, I don't know, Romania or France or whatever, to them, you are an international speaker. So I've known lots of people who started their speaking careers by first speaking internationally and then started speaking in their own country. Because once you submit to a conference abroad, they see you as an international speaker, and it's immediately valuable for them. Because, well, if you're coming from abroad, then probably you're good, right? So to summarize, how do you engage in learning and sharing? Well, you start by joining meetups and events to meet people, to feed yourself on new things that are going on, to feed yourself with experiences from others. Participate in communities. So try to see if you can participate in some meetups or in local user groups or in other software communities. Share what you've learned. So try to actively work on not only consuming content from others, but also giving content back, because this brings you maybe even more than consuming and participating. Don't doubt yourself. Ask for an explanation if you don't understand something. The better you get, the better it gets. I think this is, in general, you can say this for a career in IT. And finally, I would like to say, that's it. Hopefully I'll meet many of you while learning and sharing in the future. So please go kick some ass. Thanks a lot for your attention. If you have any feedback or questions, happy to hear it. Feel free also to reach out to me on Twitter @BJ I spend way too much time on Twitter, so probably I'll respond way too quick. And I'm really happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Bert Jan. Again, virtual round of applause for Bert Jan. It was a really great presentation, really enjoying and motivating. Thank you very much. Yeah, we will probably wait for the audience if they have questions that they want to post in the chat. In the meanwhile, I will share the link to the Google Meet that we will use after this presentation, where we can, whenever you like, any of you who like to join us there to have a little bit more of interactive session, asking questions, sharing experience, then you're very welcome to join our Google Meet. And I guess we will take a short break after this main session, and we will be there in a couple of minutes. But again, thank you very much for this great presentation. I guess in a couple of days we will have a recording of this session, and we will post the link to the recording in the as a comment to the meetup event. And now there are a couple of questions. How do you know what to wear? Are there dress codes for speakers at certain venues?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the most important thing is that you wear something that's both appropriate. So don't go in your swimsuit or without a shirt, and something that you're comfortable in. So at least in the Java world, there are no dress codes on what to wear. So for me, it also depends a bit on the audience. If I know I'm going to be presenting for a board of directors, okay, probably I wear a shirt and maybe even a jacket. If I know I'm going to present for a group of developers, I'll just wear a shirt or a hoodie or whatever. So I'd say they're not really dress codes. Just make sure that's something you look somewhat nice in, and something that feels comfortable as well. And also think a bit about that you're going to be wearing a microphone. So especially if you're a lady that's presenting, usually you wear a wireless microphone. There's a receiver that you need to attach somewhere. So if you're wearing a dress with no pockets or no belt, then it's hard for the technician to attach the wire and the transmitter somewhere. But apart from this, no fashion tips from me. Yeah, well, maybe one tip: don't wear too much. How can I say this? Too much. Don't be a walking commercial. So in my case, I am wearing an OpenValue shirt, but it's I'd say fairly hidden. Don't go to a conference with wearing a shirt like "I'm working here and we're hiring. Go to this and this site to join our company," because that typically doesn't work with developers.
Great tips. Thank you. Okay, so next question from Mark. Thank you, Wolfgang, for your question. First of all, now we have a question from Mark. How important is Twitter blogging for sharing content?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in general, you need to do whatever feels right, and you have the energy to do so. So in my case, I hardly blog. I do share a lot of content on Twitter. So it depends on what you want to reach. Do you want to just inform people with and share your knowledge? Then you can choose whatever channel you like. If you want to build kind of like your personal brand, build a name as a speaker, then it can help to consistently share things on specific channels. So for example, if you want to get on stage on major international conferences, then it helps to make sure that as much as people in the program committees who rate the proposals that are coming in know you. And the more you engage on Twitter or on other media or on YouTube or whatever, where you share content and they can get an idea of how you will be on stage, the higher the chances you are to get on stage. So once you've presented at a couple of events, it's relatively easy for a quorum committee to get an idea on how you present, because they can look you up on YouTube. There'll be a couple of recordings maybe, and they can see how you are as a speaker. But the first kind of couple of events that you want to land can be a bit harder, because they're Googling you and nothing pops up. Okay, who is this person? Is this person going to do a good job speaking at my event? Is this person going to have a nervous breakdown? Does this person speak adequate English to talk to our group of attendees? So I'd say that sharing content can help in gaining more trust in event organizers that you will do a good job when you go on stage, especially if there are videos of you around presenting. And maybe also if you have some demonstrable accomplishment in conferences, like for example at Java 1, you would have the Java 1 Rockstar Awards, where the top 10% of sessions or something would get this award. So if you have this award, you have something measurable that says, okay, I went to a big, amazing international conference, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt and this Rockstar Award, right? So that can help. So in my case, being active on Twitter has helped a lot in building my speaking career, because more people would get to know me because they saw me sharing content on Twitter.
Thank you. So I would suggest, as there are no more questions in the YouTube chat, that we will now take a short break. But first, Lasse has joined us here. Lasse is one of our colleagues from our REWE Digital Employer Branding. So I would like to add a short thank you to you, Lasse, and your colleague Felipe, for the organization of this event. Thank you very much. And of course, again, thank you, Bert Jan, for sharing your experience. We will now take a short break. I think 4 to 5 minutes, 8:15. We will be in the Google Meet. Whoever wants to join, please join us there, and we can continue with questions and answers, sharing experiences as you like.